Hi, everyone. It's Andrea Strang here at Gallery 222. I am in Wendy Prather Burwell's beautiful sellout room. We're here to talk to her about so much. She has been with us for, I think, 3 years now. And so it'll be nice to catch up with her again. So let's introduce and welcome Wendy.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you.
Hi. Do your friends look familiar?
Yes, very much.
So now this is your third year, as I said. And, that's, oh my goodness, there are pictures from your first, no, that's this show, but there's some pictures from the show previous. Is that it? Yes, that's a picture from your, I think your second show.
Yes.
Well, you won't tell everybody, but the first show you were one away from a sellout. The second show you did sell out. And again, that's the second show. That was in the big room.
Yes.
And then the now this is also another sellout. And what was it like prepping for this third time here at the gallery?
Well, it was a little different from last time because I wanted to do more branches, and it sort of came right on the heels of finishing the other show. So this was the second show during the pandemic, and the first show was kind of different because the gallery was closed until the very last weekend, I think. So you and I, Andrea, might have been the only people to see it in person.
True.
It was still really so exciting for me to see everything hung up on the walls, with breathing room, everything all sung and signed and hung, and just looking so great in the gallery. And then I just sort of went straight into painting for the next show too. So it was kind of interesting for me because this time, being in the same room that I was in a few years ago, I noticed some differences, and I'm still really fascinated by the same subjects, fruits, vegetables, and branches. But because I'm painting more branches than individual fruits and vegetables, the paintings just naturally became larger. So on the wall behind you right there, the last time I had 4 paintings there, and this time it was just 2. And it's just sort of a nature, it's just sort of a reflection of the subject matter getting bigger because it was, these big branches mostly.
Yeah, well, I was excited to come in and see the size, because again, it's not something that's in your wheelhouse before. They were always a little medium to small. So this size I was super excited about. Is it a lot different for the setup, for what the process? Is it a lot different between working this large to your normal size?
Well, probably the biggest difference for me is the level of detail. And the level of detail kind of sets the pace for the painting. The bigger ones have a lot less detail, and they end up just being, going at a faster, more energetic pace. These are the grapes from my yard. The painting is 40 inches by 30 inches, and that's really big for me. And so I was showing this picture to an artist that I value his opinion while I was still working on it. And I said, what about the stems? Are the stems okay? And he said, well, actually, the stems are one of my favorite things about your paintings. And I really love that comment because that kind of detail is really important to me. In some ways, it's a small detail. I'm using a small brush. I'm paying a lot of attention to the stems, not being, one straight line or one continuous arc. I'm sort of looking at them as, they're broken up by the leaves, and paying attention to color shifts and stuff like that. So in some ways those are small details, but in other ways, because they read at a distance, they really get to the gist of the painting, the gist of whatever I'm painting. In this case, it's the habit of the plant, its gesture, the way it hangs, the way that, as again, these these stems are all broken up by the way the leaves all sort of swing out on different at different angles. There's like an elegance to it and an awkwardness to it, and I like the way that it's both. So other details are less important to me, and I feel like suggesting them is enough. I have zero interest in doing the veins on the leaves back in the grape painting. Zero interest in getting the veins on those leaves, because too much detail can be exhausting to look at. And if you can go back to the grapes for a second, I just want to say that I really consciously held back on detail at the top left, for instance. Those are just really flat shapes. The color's less intense. The edges are less crisp. I'm keeping them on the periphery, literally, but also figuratively, because I want most of your attention to go to that center part, where all the grapes are hanging. I want it to be interesting to look at up close, but I just seem to be happier with less detail in a relatively large painting like this. On the other hand is the pear, which is 8 inches high by 6 inches wide. And I just lavished my attention on this pear. Yeah. I think of small paintings. Thank you. I think of small paintings as up close paintings. They almost pull you in. They make you lean in to see it, like somebody whispering might make you lean in to hear something. So on my end, it's very intense observation. I am really focused. It's almost meditative, and it's really, really slow. You'd just be amazed at how long I spend on these little guys, trying to get the stem to look just right, and changing all these different colors of yellow, from the top to the bottom. Some places this is very clear yellow, other places it's sort of a warmer yellow, and how those change as they move into the shadow. For a while, once I started doing the bigger paintings, I thought that I might give up these little ones. And if it was purely a business decision, I definitely would, because they just take so much time. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But there's something about that experience. It's a really different painting experience, but it's also, valuable in its own right. To be so focused and engaged in something it's kind of rare these days. So I really do appreciate being able to go back and forth between different sizes and just these different painting experiences.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's say hi to Fred Danzinger. He's one of our guys. And David Katz said hi earlier, so hi to him. What I love, before we move off of these two, the great painting is like the way, and I know we covered this before with your process, but you can feel how the branches come down into the, the composition and the shadowing in the back. So, and then you were saying about the leaves being less detailed. You definitely get a sense, and it's so quietly done, of depth into your painting. So that's all detailed. That's, you plan.
And I kind of ended before I thought I was going to end on this one. Usually I just keep going and going and going. And, it seems like it'd be the easiest thing in the world to stop with the detail, but it's not, because you just can get immersed in it. And all of a sudden you're just, gone too far. And so I really have been trying to hold back in certain places. But this is a painting where I hung it up on my easel, and I had all sorts of clamps and wires.
Right.
So that's always something that I find really interesting, to bring these things into my studio and just play around with them.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love seeing yours. I've been in your studio, and I just love your whole setup and just how you get it down, like all the different contraptions you do to get the right composition to paint. That's why these are so beautiful. I mean, if I had any of these on my, table, my island, I would love it, let alone a painting, but just even the composition itself is gorgeous. So there's two that we want to talk about that are on the darker background. Look, they're kind of ahead of me, and they are a different feel. So tell us about those.
Well, I'm calling these landscapes, but because they're outdoor scenes, but I think you could think of them sort of as a mashup between landscape and still life, or maybe outdoor still lifes. And they sort of arose from my frustration with plein air painting. I'd be outside in a beautiful place or a really interesting place, but all the paintings I came home with were just so disappointing. They were really boring and flat and lifeless. There was just no spark, no chemistry. The traditional sweeping landscapes, this big picture, that just doesn't grab me. Even though I might find the scenery beautiful and want to be immersed in it, I just came to the conclusion that I can find a place beautiful and want to be there, but still not want to paint it. And that makes sense because I'm drawn to detail and form, and I really like to spend a lot of time with a painting. I'm not a big picture person, and I wasn't really happy with my landscapes until I gave up the big views and started really zooming in. So for me, choosing what to paint is a really big deal. It's not a matter of being easy or hard. And actually, I'm really fine doing hard stuff because it doesn't matter if I don't finish it. It's still a valuable experience. But I have to go with what really grabs me. And that's something I feel really strongly about with any kind of painting, because I don't want to lose interest part of the way through, or any part of the process. I don't want to feel like I'm just phoning it in. I really want that spark there, and I want it to last even in a painting that takes a really long time, and most of mine do. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm finding very interesting in this kind of landscape or still life landscape. This is one of my favorite paintings in the show. This is Bottle Brush Buckeye. And aside from how it looks, I just like the way it makes me feel, and also the mood it sort of evokes of this morning that I painted it. It was a really misty morning at Albury Arboretum in Philadelphia, before the sun came, crashing through the clouds. And this was just a very, very small section of a huge, massive shrubs. It was just this thicket. And it was probably like 30 or 40 feet across. And I'm standing there at the edge of it, looking into it. And I think there's a photograph of it here too, where you can see. Yeah, so you can see. And even this is just a tiny fraction of this huge, massive shrubs. But you could sort of see into it a little bit. And it just, like, I just had this feeling of, being a kid and wanting to climb in there and read a book, or maybe make it into a fort with your friends, or dare each other to go.
I've done that. Yeah.
So it's like this place it's a little scary, but it's also a little enticing, and mystery, the sense of mystery in a painting is just so captivating. So I also liked the soft light of this scene, the way the leaves emerged from the darkness, and also just the color combination of these rich darks and bright greens. That's something that I come back to a lot. And so in this picture here that's up, the painting on the right is the one that I did on site, just on gesso paper. I think I was like an hour and a half, and then the light changed completely. So I came home, and I was so excited about this, which is rare for a landscape painting. But I was so excited that I just picked up immediately at home. I had a slightly bigger canvas, and I just started in on it with this study that I'd done on site and the photograph I took. And, just the memories were really fresh. So it was good to work on it that way. And I still kept puttering around with it for a while after that, but I did the gist of it right then and there, which was a fun way for me to work, to carry that excitement of what I had seen that day back to my studio. And then I could just work at my own leisurely pace, which was always just works better for me. That's just a personal thing.
Yes. Well, you answered my question, because I was wondering how what part of the process did you actually do outside, plein air type? So it was that little one on the easel. So
Yep.
you did that and then brought it home and did the larger piece.
Right.
I
And
love it.
it didn't look exactly the same. Like if you look back at that,
Yeah.
the finished one, and it wasn't quite finished at this stage, but it ended up being much brighter. For some reason, when I'm outside, I just tend to paint things really dark. So this is, the finished view here. But like you can see on the leaf at the bottom, right, how that's coming out from that darkness, and
Yes.
that's just fun for me as a painter. Like that's exciting for me to do versus, sky and the horizon.
Yes.
It's just a personal thing,
Yeah.
but, fun for me to finally find something outside that, really grabbed me like that.
Yeah. Now, some people may not know your background. I know we've covered this before, but you actually study botanicals. That's what I love about you. You took a passion that took you one direction, and you ended up this, working your, having influence your art. So you study botanicals, correct? And then it put you in your journey.
Yeah, it did. And there was something about the botanicals that was, way, way, way more detailed than this. And it just was really hard for me to keep that meticulousness, that focus at that level. And just with oil painting, you can change things at any time. So it just is sort of more forgiving, and I can just sort of play around with things. And if it doesn't work, I just try something else. If you're doing watercolor, you can't sort of paint over things in the same way. You sort of have to plan more ahead. And when I made the switch, my kids were really young. I had no attention span for doing the botanicals anymore. But I just love oil paint so much. It's really just a good fit in a lot of ways.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank God you did that. I mean, obviously, the one thing I think I don't want to be remiss in mentioning is our collectors and the love that is bestowed on both of us. Thank goodness for your talents. But the collectors, they play a huge role in this art world piece, and we do not give them enough credit, because they took a chance online. So thank you for that. But it's not like buying something from Amazon. I mean, they're actually saying to the artist, I believe in you. I love what you're creating, and please create more. So that to me, we're so grateful. I'm sure you feel the same way. But I just want the collectors to know you have a huge role in that, and maybe we don't mention that enough.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Andrea, especially with the really big paintings. Like I could see somebody buying, a little 6x8, because you can tuck that anywhere in your house. But, to buy a painting that's, 40 inches high, that's, without seeing it in person, that is, really, I'm so grateful that people are willing to do that, because it's really made all these shows possible for me. And, I love to paint, so it keeps me painting more, which is really,
yes,
really wonderful.
Yeah, it keeps.
I don't know if I mentioned before the Californians that woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
We didn't even mention that. I know people set their alarm, well, around here for 7 o'clock, but what in California, what was that? 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock. Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning. So that was especially flattering. So
yes. Oh my God. I'm full of love today. So I do want to specifically talk about the hydrangea branches. Yes, that's just so pretty. Tell us about that piece.
All right. So I was gardening in my yard, and I was just struck by how huge the hydrangea branches, or the hydrangea leaves, were last summer. I mean, almost unbelievably so. So I cut these branches, and I, just stuck them in this very classical vase. And I really liked this pairing immediately, because I like a mix of opposites. It's that mix of opposites is just really appealing to me as a painter. And so here you have formal versus informal, man-made versus organic, exuberant versus restrained, this elegance and this wildness, symmetry and asymmetry. So all of that stuff is going on. And visually, that is just really appealing to me, so much more so than if I had a really tight, refined bouquet of roses, say, in this vase. That just wouldn't grab me in the same way. There's something about that not quite going together that that is very interesting to me. The other thing in this painting, I was really trying to capture a sense of atmosphere. I wanted it to be, airy, naturalistic, light-filled, but shadowy, to have some depth. And I actually spend as much time on the background and the foreground as I do on the actual subject sometimes.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it always sort of amazes me how long those things take. And I'm going back and forth, painting it over and over again. There's my mom.
I was going to say the same.
Thank you. But just painting it over again, making it lighter or darker, warmer or cooler, until it just feels right. I'm making this imaginary space here. I want it to be believable, even if it's not realistic. So things should appear to have weight and depth. And in the end, I want it to look effortless. Like it just feels right. And like those branches and that vase really belong in that environment. So that's something that's very different from botanical illustration, where you have just your plant against this plain white background. So when I switched over to still life, that's something that's, continues to be a big challenge for me. Even after all these years, it's not something that I just slap on one color and leave it there for the duration. It sort of all comes together together. Like the as the color in the leaves changes, it's going to change how the background looks. It might be too dark or it might be too light. So it just sort of has to be all relative to each other, I guess. And
right.
Sort of.
Well, I have to say, I tease you all the time that, can I have more paintings? And you're like, no, it takes me a long time.
It does. It's really crazy.
Well, keep doing what you're doing. We have this, the one behind me I want to talk about, lemon radicchio and golden beets. That I saw for the first time. You had posted on your Instagram and said it was coming my way, and I was thrilled. I just love the color. Again, it's more color than you normally use in one painting. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think this was the unofficial fan favorite of the show, and also on Instagram. And I think people responded to it as I did when I was setting it up, and that's to that mix of colors you're talking about. Which is unusual for me to have lots of different colors, because if I have a bunch of different things in a painting, it's usually a bunch of the same thing, like a bunch of branches or a bunch of carrots, so there's not this mix of a lot of different elements bringing in a lot of different colors. I didn't initially plan it this way. I was just going to paint the beets by themselves, and I actually probably would have really enjoyed that, but I tend to have a lot of stuff on hand, and sometimes they combine, just on my table or in my fridge or on my countertop. They just sort of arrange themselves in the course of the day, getting pushed around, and different things come together. And for a while, I just had the radicchio and the beets together, and I was thinking like, oh, this could be interesting. And it wasn't until I put the lemon in there that it sort of felt like it really, it felt complete to me. I sort of like that way that things evolve, sort of more organically and gradually. I remember when I first started painting, hearing some teaching artists say, you should have a picture of your finished painting in your head from the very beginning. And maybe that's really efficient, but that doesn't sound interesting to me at all. I'd much rather have it be a surprise, have it sort of evolve. And, like when the composition sort of comes about that way, but also just the way I painted, that can end up being a surprise too. Going back to the details, so if you are looking at the beet greens, I really try to keep those on the loose side. And as I said before, that's not always easy because I could get so immersed in all that green, getting every little fold, all these shadows in there. And, while I could do that and spend a lot of time on it, you lose some of that freshness and energy that's part of the early stages of the painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would also detract from the beets, which seem to me to be more the star of the show here.
I was going to say that. You know what? The beets, but the tips of the beets.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes, exactly. Like if I spent so much time on those greens, you wouldn't look so much over the other side of the painting. So that ends up being way you're just sort of directing people's attention to where you want them to look, and by keeping that a little bit looser, it lets me put more attention on those ends of the beets, which were really quite fun to paint. Also the colors here, they feel very clear and bright, not as earthy as the other ones. And I kind of had this vague notion when I was setting it up and when I was painting of it reminding me of illustrations in a book that I had as a child. And that sounds like a really random thought, but in a way, all of these things are in the back of your mind when you're setting something up. It's sort of all a matter of your taste, like in helping you decide what you're going to paint and how you paint. You're bringing a whole lifetime of images and preferences to the table. And, that's how, paintings, that's part of the creative process and part of what makes painting such an individual thing, because, I have a totally different life experience, visual experience than other people. So it just sort of makes it more personal, I think.
Well, I wish I read the books you read as a child.
I think it was one of those creative books. I don't know if you remember those golden books, but that's what I have, or Dick and Jane, or something. It's somewhere back there. Maybe I'll figure it out one of these days.
Oh, that's love it. Well, keep doing what you're doing. I love your work. Obviously, everyone out there loves your work. It's a big stamp of keep going, keep doing what we're doing. It's just so beautiful. I want to mention real quick that you do, do your own frames, because I've had a few people come in and say, where can I get these frames? I'm like, that's all her. So you're definitely getting, beautiful, beautiful work presented beautifully with the Wendy Prather Burwell.
I just wanted to say one other thing before saying goodbye is that, when I first started selling my work, I was really sad to see things leave my studio. It was kind of like my baby, and now with everything being online, I can see my paintings all the time. So instead of being sad, I'm really happy to launch them out into the world, to have them leave my studio and go on to their next life. So that's something that's kind of a surprise to me, but it's really been great. And, good.
Well, fabulous. Thank you for your time, talents, everything. Love you. We're wrapping it up. We're going to say goodbye to Wendy. And then I just want to say, please come in by May 29th. It's around the corner, to see her show along with Patrick Lee and Alicia Acelta. I'm going to interview her next week, which will be really exciting. Same day, same time next week. And we'll just talk about her process and everything. So thank you, everyone who has tuned in. It was a great half hour, and look forward to next week. We'll see ya.